Okay, so the next question is, when does the judgment of the wicked take place?
The judgment of the wicked occurs during the 1,000 years. The investigative judgment, as the Bible scholars prefer to call it, the pre-Advent judgment, is a judgment going on right now. Because when Christ comes, the righteous will come from their graves immortal. In order to come from the grave immortal, once you come from the grave immortal, there's no need for a judgment for you. Someone has already decided that's how you will come up. 1 Corinthians 15, 51 to 55. The dead shall be raised incorruptible. They can no longer die. They come up with immortality. Well, who decided that? It had to be decided before they were raised. And so there is a judgment going on now. It is the judgment on those who claim to have been a part of the house of God. 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 17, for the time is come, the judgment must begin at the house of God. The house of God means those who have professed some sort of relationship with God. The house of God has wheat and tares, but they are the house of God. And the judgment is to decide who is the wheat and who is the tare. When that is finished, that's when Jesus comes back. And when we get to heaven with him, then we begin the judgment of the wicked. Now, let me be clear. The judgment of the wicked is different from the judgment of the just. The judgment of the just, or the house of God, is to decide who was really faithful, who was not. Then decisions are made as to who will be saved, who will not. The judgment of the wicked is not to decide who will be saved. The fact that they did not come up in the first resurrection is all the proof we need that they are already lost. The judgment is for the redeemed and for angels and for unfallen worlds to see that God's judgment against the wicked was just, that throughout eternity, or since the controversy began, God has always been just. Because LOI tells us it was only when some angels saw what Satan did to Christ on the cross that they finally cut off all sympathy with him. Up to that point, some angels still believe he had been unfairly treated. If you read 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 12, it tells us at the end of verse 12, which things the angels desire to look into. Angels do not understand everything. And since we're heading for a world where sin will never return, everyone has to be absolutely convinced that sin is a bad thing and righteousness is the way to live. And so it takes 1,000 years for us, the unfallen worlds, and the angels to see that God is just. That is why before the wicked are destroyed, after the 1,000 years, before Satan is destroyed, every lost person will bend the knee and say that Jesus Christ is Lord. They will agree that God was right in his judgment, and then they'll be destroyed. And so the judgment of the wicked is not to decide who will be lost. That's already decided by their own choice. The judgment of the wicked is for the redeemed to sit with Christ and examine the records and to see that the punishment they're about to receive is just. Now, let me say something else. There's a difference between punishment and wages, but they're all connected. The wages of sin is death. But according to Luke 12, from 42 to 48, some are beaten with many stripes, some are beaten with few stripes. The more wicked you are, the more you suffer before you die. Now, this is not the sort of thing people want to hear. They want to hear how to get rich, how to get a husband or a wife. But the Bible has many, many things we need to be familiar with. Even the most familiar verse in the Bible has death and life. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish. What does perish mean? Burn in the fires of hell, but have everlasting life, a life with God. And so in that 1,000 years, we will see that various periods of suffering will be assigned to different people. And we know that Satan will burn the longest before he finally perishes. He burns the longest, clearly, because he's Satan. Some people, the moment the fires hit them, they're consumed because their lives were not that wicked. So we have differences in suffering before the final blotting out. But all will finally die because the wages of sin is death. And so the Bible says, behold, I come quickly, and my reward is with me to give every man according as his work shall be. If you've been very, very wicked, you suffer more before you die. Remember, suffering is attached both to salvation and to damnation because Jesus suffered, and the lost will suffer similarly. Sorry for that response.
Oh, it's no problem. This is what we're here for. But thank you for that explanation.
Mm-hmm.
Really, I did not know, before I read The Truth About Angels by Ellen G. White, I didn't know that the angels, sympathize with Satan. I was like, what? And really, Ellen White also said that we're living this life for self-revelation. So it's not that God doesn't know who's not going to die and who's not going to go to hell, but he's doing it so we can see with our own eyes why he made a certain choice. And yes, definitely the wicked will be destroyed and the righteous will help Jesus judge. Yeah, so the last question that I have is, based on Revelation 21, verse 2, we know that New Jerusalem descends from heaven to earth after the millennium. But is it earth when hellfire comes down?
Yes, it is. It comes down on Mount of Olive, the mountain splits. A part of that earth is made holy and sacred. That's where the city sits. When the earth is consumed with fire, Revelation 20, verse 9 and 10, the fires burn all around the city. And Ellen White tells us, while the fires are burning, the saved, that's us, will be in the city safe and secure. Great Controversy, page 673, paragraph 3. The redeemed will be in the earth, in the city, watching this global conflagration. They will be safe from the fire. The wicked will be consumed. And it'll take several days for the fire to finally do its work, because it burns up the earth physically, it burns up the atmosphere, it burns up the spirit beings. And the different lengths of burning differently. You know, there's some, I wonder if I should tell you this, it's so frightening. But Ellen White says, as long as a little part of you is left that is not consumed, you feel all the agony of the burning. So if the only thing left to burn is a fingernail, you feel it as though all of you is still burning. Hell is no place to be. That's why she says we have a heaven to gain and a hell to shun. And let me say, people do not like to hear these things. They find them depressing. But there's something called negative motivation. Negative motivation means I don't want to go to hell. And there's nothing wrong with that. And we have negative motivation in John 3:16. Whosoever believeth in him should not perish. And so I have a reason to be saved. I want to be with Jesus, but I also do not want to go to hell. My major reason is Jesus, but I don't want to go to hell. And so Ellen White said we have a heaven to gain and a hell to shun. And to gain, actively shun hell. You must actively shun hell. Shunning hell does not happen automatically. You must actively shun hell and everything that is hellish.
Thank you for that. We do not want to be in hell, guys.
No, you don't.
Let's do what we have to do now. And just before I go, me and my mother, we were talking about the judgment, and I literally told her that Jesus is the shield. The difference between the righteous and the wicked is literally Jesus. So the wicked just rejected their shield from God's wrath.
That's right. That's right.
But so guys, there's nothing we can do. Jesus did everything. Thank you, Elder Randy Skeete. It was a pleasure questioning you. I will turn it back to Denisha.
All right.